Hello again, Thomas Crockett here. I'm now going to tell a story from the third section of my book. The title of the section is Psychedelic Trips. It's not called Psychedelic Trips for nothing. The stories are about being under the influence of LSD. So if you don't like stories about drugs, you may want to bypass this one. But you'd be foolish if you do, because this is some good shit if I do say so. Mind you, I'm not advocating drug use. Not at 66 years old, anyway. I'm just telling honest stories about what took place 50 years ago. This is a story called The Globetrotters. I once climbed the world. I'm serious. Before I explain, let me give some background. I had friends for every occasion. I had beer-drinking friends, pot-smoking friends, amphetamine-taking friends, barbiturate-taking friends, and acid-tripping friends. This is a story about the latter group, in particular, Digger and Blarney. Show them a tab of LSD and their eyes lit up like little kids on Christmas morning. Blarney was a blue-eyed, red-faced Irishman, so not only would his eyes light up, his whole face would burn bright as a bulb. As for why he was called Blarney, he could tell a fib like no other. He never saw anything real that couldn't be twisted and made into a myth. He would have made a hell of a writer if he had lived to see 30. But that's a story I won't tell because I made a promise to his soul, may it rest in peace, that I wouldn't get into those details. Just the acid trip. Digger's name went way back to when he was a kid, when he dug up worms in his backyard and ate them. I never saw him eat worms, was only told by others that he did. But I saw him dig into the dirt. That's where he kept his valuables, such as drugs and money and his favorite chocolates. He didn't trust his alcoholic stepfather, whom he knew, if he had the opportunity, would rob him blind. He was like me. He had an Italian mother and an Irish father. Though unlike me, he was tall and thin, getting his height from his father, whom he never knew and never wanted to know, given the stories his mother told him. It was the summer of 1971. We went to Shea Stadium to camp out and buy tickets to see Grand Funk Railroad in concert. We took our LSD tabs the minute I parked my car. It was a little past 8 o'clock at night. The parking lot was full and long lines had already formed at the ticket gates. We had no intention of joining the lines, no matter how much music people played, or how many drugs were passed around, or how many good-looking girls were there to look at. And believe me, there were plenty. LSD was not a stand-still, sit-down drug. It required moving, eyes and limbs, hands and feet, in order to search, explore, and discover. The Flushing Meadow Park next door to Shea Stadium, where the 1964-1965 World's Fair had taken place, suited our needs. Though most of the sites were gone, the important one remained. The most visible, iconic, inspiring sight of all, the Uni-sphere, the 12-story-high metallic globe of the world, towering over fountains and flags, plants and flowers, and anyone who stood beneath it. The acid took effect by the time we got there. The moon was full that night, shining on the globe, turning the continents of the world and its surrounding oceans into shining symbols of silver and blue. Blarney said he felt electricity racing through his body. If he ran full speed, he was certain he would take off like a jet plane. If he touched a tree, its branches would alight in flames. If he shook our hands, we would die. He promised he would do none of that, thankfully. Still, he wasn't about to waste the energy that charged through him. He was going up. He was climbing. What better way to spend the night than globetrotting on the globe? Become a psychedelic-induced globetrotter. He had never traveled anywhere, and he reminded us that we hadn't either, unless we wished to consider train rides into Manhattan or out to Rockaway Beach traveling. Digger and I agreed they didn't count. Blarney said we owed it to ourselves to see what we had never seen before. He said the names Magellan and Columbus. They didn't have the advantage of taking acid like we did. They had to take boats and be gone at sea for months and years to see what we were about to see in the flash of an hour. Did we dig what he was saying? Did we hear the continents of the world beckoning to us? He said he heard them call his name. Did we hear them speaking our names? Digger said he heard them call his name. I didn't hear my name, but I said I did, because it was best for acid-tripping friends to share the same altered reality. I heard myself say, "Let's see what we've never seen before." Blarney said, "Let's go, mates. Let us stake our claims to the places we'd heard about, though never imagined we'd visit." We climbed on concrete embankments, on metal frameworks, grabbing onto beams and heavy steel wires. The higher we climbed, the greater the rewards. That according to Blarney, who continued to lead with instruction and inspiration. I wanted to have his size and strength, his fuck it attitude, his ability to climb and not care how high he climbed, his ability to look down on the fountain and flags, the plants, flowers, and trees, knowing he stood higher than any of them, knowing it made him feel like one of the great conquerors of the world to do so. They were ahead of me until I lost sight of them, at which time my heart fell into my stomach and a breath caught in my throat. I couldn't swallow. "Don't look down," I told myself. "Whatever you do, don't look down." "Where are you?" I managed to shout. "I'm in Africa," came a voice. It was Blarney's. "I'm in Europe," I heard Digger yell. Where was I? I didn't know. Not on a continent. Not anywhere, really. Just in between places. I wanted to be with them. Not in Africa and Europe, but in New York. I wanted my feet on the ground to look up at the world, not be on it. "Wait for me," I yelled. "I don't want to be left alone." "I'm in Asia now," Blarney said. I heard Digger say, "Australia." "Wait for me," I yelled again. "Come on, Top Cat," Blarney shouted. "The world beckons." "Yeah," Digger added. "Can't you hear it calling your name?" I didn't hear anything, just my heart beating, ready to explode in my chest, just my strangled thoughts. I stepped, one leg up, pulling on a metal beam, stretching myself. I heaved myself up, holding to a steel wire. I repeated my movements until I arrived at my discovery. I gripped the South American Horn, where Chile and Argentina met. I was in South America. I was a conqueror, a globetrotter, like Blarney and Digger. I yelled in Spanish, "Estoy en América del Sur! Estoy en América del Sur! ¿Dónde estás, Blarney? ¿Dónde estás, Digger?" It was the first time since studying the language in school and learning very little that I spoke it in the real world. If I was indeed in the real world, which I doubted I was, until I did what I had warned myself not to do. I looked down. At that moment, the real world of life and death seized me. I was in trouble. I had climbed too high. In my quest to reach the proverbial star, the zenith of a young man's dreams, his Icarus moment, I had overreached my ambitions. I would die in the worst possible way, falling from a great height, swallowed by the earth's unforgiving waves, understanding that discovery came with a price. For the record, let me say, in case you haven't experienced it, a panic attack on LSD is not a normal panic attack. It's an attack that makes your blood race, leaves you gasping for air, strangles your senses, makes you weightless, makes you see devils and demons in hell, makes you scream for the life you believe you are about to lose. I couldn't feel my feet. I felt my grip slipping, saw myself falling into the ocean below. Help! I screamed, not knowing the whereabouts of Blarney and Digger, whether they remained alive or had fallen from the earth, as I was about to do, into the many bodies of water that encircled the continents. Help! I screamed again. I heard Blarney's voice. Hang on! You're alive? I cried. Save me! Hurry up! Where are you? I'm in Asia, visiting a Japanese brothel. I heard him laugh, that big Irish laugh of his. I'll be right there. Is Digger alive? I shouted. Digger's alive, Digger shouted back. I'm crossing the Indian Ocean. They appeared at the same time. Neither of them held on to anything. I don't understand why they didn't fall. They laughed as I continued to say, help! I'm falling! Help me! Blarney told me to put my foot down. What? I yelled. Are you crazy? I'll fall into the ocean. It's not an ocean, Blarney said. It's a ledge, and you're only a foot from touching it. What do you think we're standing on? I don't know, I said. I don't know. Just help me, please. I don't want to die. Stop laughing. It's not funny. Blarney grabbed me around the waist. I felt my hands disengage from the South American horn. I felt myself being lifted. I screamed, no! No! I felt my feet on the concrete ledge. I shed a tear. They continued to laugh. You're such a baby, Top Cat, Digger said. It's not my fault, I said. It's the acid. It's some crazy shit. I made them promise not to leave me as we descended the globe, to hold on to me as we climbed down. I remember saying that if I lived through the descent and made it to the ground, I would never again do acid. I broke that promise a few weeks later when we went to the concert, sitting in the upper deck. I felt safe, Blarney on one side of me, Digger on the other. It felt good to experience a sit-down acid trip for once with my best acid-tripping friends.